Okay, this is video number 57 from this book, Best of the West in Art, Music, Movies, and Books by me, Pete Rogers. I can also tell you, on the internet, almost nobody's interested in this book, but I can tell you in real life, this is my favorite book of people. Okay, you know Jeff Nelson, VegSource, he's read all my books. He says, this is my best book. I'm telling you, it's a great book. It's a beautiful book. We're now on, part 97, what the hell, part 57. Video 57, part 10, okay? We're doing a couple of paintings from the seaport. I'm going to do some quotes of Jose Ortega Gasset because they're good. The idea of a shipwreck and how do you recover from a shipwreck. Trust me, it's good. Okay, Seaport at Night by Claude Vernet. Beautiful painting. Western Christian art has tons, many thousands of masterpiece paintings. They're so great, it's not even funny. Okay, here's a beautiful painting. This is by The Ninth Wave by Ivan Ivajovsky, and they're on a cross. And basically, that's what keeps you alive in an ocean of troubles, is to cling to the cross. Okay, and it was painted in 1815. It's an obviously magnificent painting. And again, it shows, people think, in the 1900s, the Russians are a bunch of third world barbarians and they suck. They suck at anything cultural. But it's not because the Russians suck. It's because communism sucks, okay? Once the Soviets took over and imposed atheism, everything goes to shit, okay? But before that, in the 1800s, the Russians did a lot of great stuff, a lot of great painting, and a lot of great literature, okay? Especially Dostoevsky and Chekhov and Pushkin. But still, it's a masterpiece painting. Okay, the next painting is again by Vernet, Shipwrecked by Claude Vernet, 1772. And now I'm going to do the quotes of Jose Ortega Gasset about shipwreck because they're good and they're true. And what I'm basically saying here is that when a person really wants to learn something, like if you want to learn something, you're like, hey, I need to learn about coronary artery disease, I need to learn about low-fat vegan diet to lose weight, or I need to learn something to help somebody, my mother, my father, whatever. You're serious about it. You read about it, you try to figure out, you weigh the evidence. Okay, that's real learning. But school, where some old lady yaps at you and tells you need to know this for Friday for the test, you don't even care about it, that's not real learning. That's playing games, okay? So real learning means you have a need, you feel it, you want to learn this, it's important to you, you've got to solve a problem. Okay, so anyways, I think Jose Ortega Gasset, the Spanish philosopher, gets to the point pretty quick. He says, to live is to feel oneself lost. He who accepts that this has already begun to find himself on firm ground, instinctively, as do the shipwrecked. He will look around for something to cling to, and that tragic glance is sincere because it is a question of his salvation. It will cause him to bring order into the chaos of his life. These are the only genuine ideas, the idea of the shipwreck. All the rest is posturing, rhetoric, and farce. Tell me what you pay attention to, and I will tell you who you are. Civilization is nothing else but the attempt to reduce force to being the last resort. To be oneself is heroism. Yeah, it's hard to be yourself in a society that's always trying to force you to be conformist. Effort is only effort when it begins to hurt. To wonder is to begin to understand. Notice how this sounds a lot like Soren Kierkegaard. It's the mind that is in despair that has the best chance of fixing itself because it is aware. Estar is to be studying biology. Ser is to see yourself as a biologist. The student who sees himself as a member of the club, as a young biologist, will learn faster than the grade-seeking student and remember better. Yeah, and that's a perfect example. If you're studying Spanish, if you try to communicate with the language, you'll be behind initially to the kids that are just doing the grammar questions like the teacher says. But in the long run, you'll get better. And I can remember when I was a sophomore at Stanford University and I wanted to try to become good at school, science, biology, medicine, something like that, or be a veterinarian. And I hung out with the guys that were really serious about it. They wanted to be clinical scientists. And, we would go bird watching out in the fields, okay? We'd go to the nature centers, okay? We'd go to Point Reyes, for example. And my friend had a naturalist, attending physician friend. And we were serious about it. We would read all those books, Stephen Jay Gould. I went to the Palo Alto Baylands by myself to go bird watching, to try to put it all together. And I go up to the lady at the desk. I'm like, can I please have the field guide for the Palo Alto Baylands? And she said, we don't have a field guide. And I looked at her like she was insane. How could a nature center not have its own field guide of the animals and the plants? And I was wrestling, full-time Division I wrestler, starter on the varsity, taking a full course load of difficult science classes, and I'm like, this is a travesty that they don't have a field guide. So despite having no free time whatsoever, I went there and I mapped out all the birds and I mapped out all the plants, and I wrote a field guide for them when I was just a little sophomore in college, and I really didn't know too much. What I'm trying to say is, in my mind's eye, I am a future scientist, biologist. I have to do this. What I'm trying to say is, the reason why I got an A+ in biology class, by the way. The reason why I got good at biology is because I felt I had to do this. My life was kind of a mess. I'm like, I got injured. My girlfriend broke up with me. I was all sad about that. I thought she was going to be my wife. And then I got injured in wrestling. I'm like, oh my God, I might never be good again at wrestling. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Okay, I got to be good at science. Thank God God's given me another chance. Biology it is. And I thought it was kind of cool, and I had friends that liked it, and I'm like, this is the language of God to write the book of life is biochemistry. I got to learn all this stuff. So I was, I would study until I'd fall out of my chair. There was, Saturday night was just another time to study, okay? There was almost no social life at Stanford. It's like one of the worst colleges in the world for social life. But I don't know, that type of attitude, you learn. Okay, so anyways, every living creature is happy when he fulfills his destiny, and that is when he realizes himself, when he is being that which in truth he is. And I think I had that old mentality of my father and my uncles. It's an honor to be a scholar, okay? A scholar is a valuable thing to be, and it's an honor to have the opportunity to be that, so I'll take that. The man who discovers a new scientific truth has previously had to smash almost everything that he has learnt, and he arrives at the new truth with his hands bloodstained from the slaughter of 1,000 platitudes. So yeah, that's another thing true. People say, oh, so-and-so made a new act for tap, isn't it? A new, application, app for technology stuff. Isn't that wonderful? It's not like that in medicine. In medicine, when you figure out something new, people hate your guts. You're an effing a-hole because you are now saying that what they do to make money is wrong and your idea is better. And they need to learn a whole new thing, and they need to stop doing all that BS that they do to make money that screws over the patients and doesn't help them. They're like, screw you, pal. Go F yourself. You make enemies when you improve something in healthcare. Anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you, okay? Almost all these new drugs that come out, they're all fake, okay? But when you do something for real, like you say, like Esselstyn, you can cure the coronary arteries of the low-fat vegan diet. Do you know that open heart surgery bills for like up to $200,000, coronary artery stent, $30,000 or more a piece? Do you think they want the Esselstyn diet? No freaking way, okay? So I'm just telling you, that's how it is. No one likes you. Everybody's pissed off at you. They're going to do what they can to shut you up and shut you up fast. So you're not welcome. Basically, that's why I say if you have a high IQ, like over 150, a real high IQ, you shouldn't go into medicine. All you're going to do is make enemies. They're going to hate your guts. So go find some other area where your brain will be welcome. Okay, it's the opposite of sports. I remember when I was wrestling in college, a guy would come in, with a great new technique. We'd love it. We'd go watch all his matches. How's he doing it? How does he set that up? Okay, we thought it was great. But it's not like that in medicine. In medicine, you come along with a new, better technique. They're like, shut up, go F yourself. You're not welcome here. Get the hell out of here, okay? That's how it is. All right, Ortega Gasset continues. It is enough to compare the approach of a man who is going to study an already existing science with the approach of a man who feels a real, sincere, and genuine need for it. Yeah, like this guy wrote in this book about cancer. He's got cancer. He's afraid he's going to die. His girlfriend just died. He's shitting a brick that he needs to figure this out. And so that's why this book's a masterpiece. Versus all the books written by cancer professors are a bunch of phony, dishonest crap. They stink, okay? I've read them. They suck, okay? And they're just going to sit there and tell you DNA theory. And they're like, where's the evidence? They have no evidence. Why? Because we say so and we're the experts. All right, so Gasset continues. The former, the student who's just taken a class because it's required, he will not question the content of the science. He will not criticize it. On the contrary, he will tend to comfort himself by thinking that the content of this science already exists, has a defined value, that it's the truth. What the student wants to do is simply to assimilate it as it already is. On the other hand, the man who is needful of that science, his mother's dying and he wants to help her, he feels a profound necessity of truth, and he will approach this bit of ready-made knowledge with caution, full of suspicion, submitting it to criticism, even assuming in advance that what the book says is not true. In short, for the very reason that he needs with such deep anguish to know, he will think that the knowledge does not exist, and he will manage to unmake what is presented as already made. It is men like this who are constantly correcting, renewing, and recreating science. Yep, that's what you have to do to get to the truth. And that will make you an enemy of colleges and med schools and grad schools. They're there to teach you what is established and that they're making money on, and that's where their prestige comes from. They're not there to figure anything out. It's like the real philosophers can't get a job in a philosophy department, okay? And the BS artists control those places. They don't want real thinkers coming in, okay? The fact is that the typical student is one who does not feel the direct need of science, nor any real concern with it. Yet he sees himself as forced to busy himself with it to get a grade. This student is a falsification of man. This may have sounded so stupefying when we first pronounced it, it becomes the essential tragedy of the teaching profession, and in my judgment, the reform of education ought to begin with this brutal paradox, because the activity itself, the activity which pedagogy regulates and which we call studying, is mainly false, something that happens that is not as much emphasized as it should be, namely that in no order of life is the element of falsity so constant, so habitual, and so tolerated as it is in teaching. The student does not study, and if he does, putting his best into it, he does not learn. And it is clear that if the student, for whatever reason, does not learn, then the professor cannot really say that he is teaching. At the very best, he is trying to teach, but he is not succeeding. Yeah, people forget everything from grade school, from high school, and most of the stuff from college, too. I know people who majored in Spanish in college, and they can't speak it at all. And so the terrible gap, which began at least a century ago, it continues to grow. The gap between the living culture of genuine knowledge and the ordinary man. A man will remain intact as he was. That is to say, he will remain uncultured, a barbarian. And if you don't think barbarism is coming back, take a look at the Super Bowl halftime show with this Bad Bunny scumbag from Puerto Rico. Okay, I'm Puerto Rican. Okay, I love Daddy Yankee. I love Anita Nazario. I love Hector Lavoe. But Bad Bunny, he stinks. He's a third world barbarian scumbag. Okay, and if people allow the NFL to have halftime shows like that, nobody's going to let their kids watch it. The NFL, its money is going to drop into the garbage can. All the players' salaries are going to drop. They should all be protesting and pissed off about that. You know, I used to watch pro sports, football and basketball with my dad, okay? But with people like Bad Bunny running the halftime show, parents aren't going to let their kids watch. They shouldn't. Any good parent won't let their kid watch. And that's going to mean a loss of tremendous revenue for the NFL, the NBA, and other pro sports. Okay. Now continue with Hector Ortega Gasset. In order for me to understand the science, it is not enough to study. It is also necessary that I should genuinely feel the need of this, that I be truly preoccupied with its questions. Only then will I understand the answers it gives. No one can thoroughly understand an answer unless he has understood the question to which it replies. Fundamentally, true teaching of science is especially teaching the need for true scientific knowledge. Okay, that's a great description of what's really going on. Okay, Gasset continues. The average man studies in school because he is forced to get a grade, to get a degree, to punch his ticket, not because he wants to learn, and he does not learn. And so the enormous gap continues to grow between the genuine cultural knowledge of mankind and the average man. The root structure heritage of modern science and culture is not learned by the average man. And underneath the superficial veneer of modernity, he remains an uncultured barbarian, prone to violence. This has led to humanity's return to barbarism. Barbarism is the absence of standards to which an appeal can be made. And things are going that way. I hope we bounce out of it. That's one of the things I'm trying to do with this YouTube channel, because the Western civilization has the greatest cultural legacy in history that's ever in the history of the world by far. It's superior to all other civilizations. In comparison to Western civilization, all other civilizations is backward. There's no comparison. Almost everything good and advanced and sophisticated came out of the Western civilization, from the ancient Greeks and Romans through the West. Okay, there's exceptions to that, but not that many. That's just a fact. That's a historical fact. Just ask yourself, where did all this stuff come from? Where did the automobile come from? Where did the radio come from? Where did electricity come from? Where did the light bulb come from? And it came from the Catholic Church, starting the scientific method in Europe. That's where it comes from. That's not like my opinion. That's well known. Anybody can study it. Okay, Jose Ortega Gasset. The mass crushes beneath it everything that is different, everything that is excellent, individual, qualified, and select. So despite everything having come from the West and out of the Christian tradition, what is it that the big money groups want to destroy? They want to destroy all of Christianity. But once you destroy all of Christianity, you will have no moral foundation. And that, I think, is intentional. And then you'll end up with barbarism, savagery, and a return to slavery. It's obvious. If anybody who's thought about it, it's obvious. Okay. But despite this being obvious, the public doesn't get it. And I'm like, how could you not get that? And it's a public school. They grow up thinking that the system is designed to help them. It's not designed to help you. It hates the proles. It wants to get rid of them. It thinks there's too many of them. Okay, anyways, Jose Ortega Gasset continues. The mass crushes beneath it everything that is different, everything that is excellent, individual, qualified, and select. Yep. Falling in love is an inferior state of the mind, a form of transitory imbecility. Okay, how did that get in there? The most radical division that it is possible to make of humanity is that which splits it into two classes of creatures. Those who make great demands on themselves, piling up difficulties and duties, and those who demand nothing special of themselves, but for whom to live is to be at every moment what they already are, without imposing on themselves any effort towards perfection, mere buoys that float on the waves. Yeah, most people aren't really too motivated to do anything. They've kind of given up on themselves, and they just get through the day, day by day. And, a lot of them are real good people. They just, they're good to their friends and families, and that's nice. But they're never going to achieve anything. If you want to achieve anything, you got to be driven. Okay, Jose Ortega Gasset. Our life is at all times and before anything else the consciousness of what we can do. The metaphor is probably the most fertile power possessed by man. I am myself plus my surroundings, and if I do not preserve the latter, I do not preserve myself. Yeah, if you don't preserve your country, then you won't have one, and you will no longer be a citizen, you'll be a subject. Okay, let's see, what do I got left here? Oh, here's just a kind of a sad painting. But you know what? I think I'll stop right there for today because that was a lot of quote material by Gasset. We'll start up here for the next one. I hope you found that interesting.